my customers, they are usually watch collectors.
Mhm.
And some of them have really big brand watches, big names, and they say it's in the same league. So people having a collection of Patek, Audemars Piguet, and other big ones, and they just say this one fits into that category.
Okay, so I'm here with Martin Klocke. He is the CEO of Sherpa Watches. Super happy to have you here on the channel, Martin. Welcome to Horology Biology.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much for having me, and really nice to see you again, even virtually, but it's been quite a while.
So how did the idea of Sherpa Watches come about?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a common interest, which is the vintage Enicar world.
Just a little.
Just a tiny bit.
Just a little obsession.
Yeah, so in 2011 or something, I was looking for a watch for my wife. And I'm not the mainstream guy in many respects, but also in watches. And I was looking for interesting watches, which are not so common. And I was looking through eBay, and I found a very interesting dual crown, internal turning bezel, a lady dive watch from Enicar, which I quite liked, and was an NOS piece. And from the I would guess, end 60s, turn of the 70s maybe, beautiful. And I bought it, and it was tiny. I mean, yes, of course, they wrote how little it was, but when I got it, it was just like, but it's beautiful. My wife also liked it, and she wore it several years, I would guess.
Yeah.
And that, made me interested in Enicar. I thought, oh, what are they doing? And I found other watches. I bought a Super Divette in a cushion case. I bought a Jet. And after a while, I thought, why aren't these beautiful watches around anymore? And I found out, yes, there are watches around with Enicar on them, but they're completely different. And
yeah, very, very different. Yeah.
History. And when I dug more into the history, I thought they would deserve to be back. And I wrote a letter to the current owner, the Warming Hong Holding Company in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
A friend of mine in Hong Kong posted it with receipt. I know they got it, but no reply. So
shame.
Yeah, quite a shame. And a friend of mine, he's a company consulting business, and he's always consulting other people and telling them what to do. And he said, yeah, you've got to do it yourself, Martin. I said, come on, you're crazy. I'm an engineer, but I haven't made watches yet. But it didn't really drop. I mean, it stayed in my mind.
Yeah.
And then I found out that, of course, Enicar is taken, the brand name. But in Europe, in the EU, Sherpa was available as a trademark. So I registered it, and I did my research, and well, then I ended up where you see me now. So we met in 2019, where I was still pondering and looking at my options, and then I went step by step.
But I was going to say, it's amazing how fast the time has gone, and the amount of productivity that's obviously gone into it, and where we are now. I mean, it's quite phenomenal, because it's not been that long since 2019. Obviously, it's not that many years.
Yeah, it hasn't been like that, but me being critical and quite impatient, I thought, wow, it's ages. It took ages. But I mean, if you look at it, I mean, it's not that long. And especially considering that I'm a more or less one-man army, one-man show, of course, with a team and suppliers. But yeah, I founded a company from scratch, and re-engineered two beautiful watches from the past. Yeah.
As you're well aware, of course, there are many, many micro brands out there. What is making Sherpa Watches different now that you guys are on the scene? You're new to this, obviously. And like I said, because there's so many out there, obviously there's a lot of competition. So what makes Sherpa Watches different?
Of course, one of the points which make us different is the heritage that we refer to. So, I mean, we do not claim to reinvent or to invent something completely new. We refer to the Sherpa series of the I would say mainly 60s, probably 70s, which are brilliant. So we are referencing the Sherpa series, which has so many brilliant models, and I think this is quite unique. And we're trying to transport it in the best way we think into the present. So lovers of very special, unique design will find something for them in our collection.
Yeah.
The second part, which is very special, I think, is most micro brands tend to have a private label company doing the assembly, sourcing, and everything else. Sometimes even the logistics. So you are mostly seeing micro brands having Asian parts, then Swiss made.
Yeah.
And I didn't opt for that. So we have really sourced German and Swiss suppliers. We don't have a private label company doing all that for us. So we are a bit more boutique than most private label. We have our watchmaker sitting in Germany. We don't have an assembly line or anything like that. It's really one watch after the other made by one guy.
Wow.
And of course, the supply chain is only in Europe. I took that decision consciously, which also has consequences for the price point, but I wanted to have everything in Europe.
Yeah. Okay. Was that a decision that you made from the beginning, or was that something that more like developed over time?
It dawned on me during the project, because I thought the original Enicar models were high quality watches made in Switzerland.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Back then there was no Asian supply chain, but I thought, okay, if I want to bring back EPSA, Erwin Piqueret, and Enicar design and technology, I thought it would be not a good style to do that from Asia.
Yeah, true.
So I wanted to do it in a different way. Of course, yeah. And then of course, another thing is our connection to the Sherpa culture, the Sherpa people, which is quite unique. So we have the only, I think worldwide only watch with a spiritual complication
absolutely
inside of the watch.
Yeah.
So
because correct me if I'm wrong, you're actually I was going to say correct me if I'm wrong, but you're actually a Buddhist yourself as well, a practicing Buddhist.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay. So then obviously that means a lot to you as well, and to have that within the watch, and obviously with what you guys are pushing back towards that community, like within Tibet and places like that.
Right. Right. So it was also not something I had in mind when I started. So that also came during the way. I mean, many things came on the way. So I did just step by step, and suddenly something appears, and I just took some decisions. And this ended up in the brand that it is right now. So in a way, it's quite funny. When I started, I didn't know where this would lead. So it was more like an adventure. And during many crossways and crossroads, I decided what to do. And in the end, it looks like a nice marketing, something someone had in the white room and was on the white paper. How are we going to sell a new brand? And made a big plan and followed through. And I just didn't. I started with nothing, no idea, just a dream.
A dream which has actually become reality now when you think about it.
Yeah.
So the attention to detail on the watches is obviously exceptional. I've had one in my hands. I'm very happy with what I saw. And obviously my video is going to be showing this, so everybody's going to see that. But what level of expertise did it take, if you know what I mean? Like, you must have gone to some exceptional levels to like reproduce parts, etc., etc. Maybe you can touch on that.
Well, so first I started with a lot of research in Swiss archives to really find out what was so special about the watches from technology side. I mean, the Erwin Piqueret EPSA cases had a special case back system.
Yeah, very true.
In this case, it's the bayonet version of the compressor or super compressor, but basically it's a compressor. Super compressor has a threaded screw down special design. And for Enicar, they only used the bayonet system. So we reinvented the bayonet compressor system, made sure it's the best kind of new bayonet we can use, which means we looked into the details. I didn't like the fact that the old bayonet system you could put in and turn into infinity. So now we have some kind of labyrinth inside of the case. So you put in the case only in the case back only in one direction, and you turn it 45 degrees, and then it's fixed. You can never put it in any other way. So I researched about EPSA, also about the crowns. So I did my homework, and the crowns are also very special, which makes another unique point you won't find anywhere else. So I reinvented the complete compressor watch, including the crowns. And basically, I'm a guy who likes detail. That's for sure. And I don't want to do half things, you know. When I do it, I want to do it well. So I looked at how to bring back the original EPSA case back and crowns. I found a very good case maker who makes the cases in Pforzheim in Germany for Glashütte Original. So very high quality. And then I've got a good designer, but of course, together with the designer, we looked at all the details. And I can tell you, I mean, we probably turned around every micrometer of this design. So we started basically with re-engineering the old one, and then looking at all the details. How do you want this, that? For example, the hands used to be flat hands in the old Enicar models. At the OPS, you can't see it so well because they have satinized facets on the hands. I thought if you have an OPS military style watch, you can't have polished hands because it doesn't make sense in that context. So we have faceted hands with satinized surface, which is something which the original didn't have. You can see the facets better with the ultra dive. Maybe I should send you also an ultra dive to check that.
Send away. Feel free. I'm not saying that I'll send it back, but still.
Also, the dials, they are slightly domed, which makes things a bit more complicated. I wanted to have that because that's a special, you know, I like the looks. And in the ultra dive, it was more complicated because into the domed dial, we had to set in, we had to mill pockets, and into the pockets, we put in the indices. And the old one had a, what do you call it? A coined dial, like if you form a coin. So they formed everything in one piece, and then they made the surface of the indices, but it's considered to be inferior.
I understand.
So we made the higher
two things. I was going to say two things for me that really jumped out regarding the watch, and it's something that you don't really see until you've got it in your hand. And as I've been waiting for so long, and when I finally got it, the two main things that actually jumped out was the crystal. I loved the way that you actually reproduced the original style plexiglass crystal, and those crystals were special to the watch, obviously, because they retained the bezel in place. But the way that it had very flat edges, obviously, around it, but then it had that dome and obviously sat very high. To the fact that you'd recreated this with a sapphire crystal, obviously, so it's up to modern standards, etc., etc. It's you know, very robust and it's tough, etc. And for me, that was a really good attention to detail that jumped out, because one of the things that I really like about the ops and the original ops and the original Sherpa ops is, of course, that very prominent crystal which just sits so well on the watch, and the way that you reproduced that I thought was absolutely excellent. The other thing as well, and this is a funny thing, I've touched on this in the video, was the first thing that jumped to me when I had it in my hand was, hang on a second, why is the bezel pip not loomed? This is crazy. How can you have a diver watch that's not got loom on the actual bezel? Sorry, because when you're using it, it doesn't make any sense. Until, of course, then I got in the dark and I realized, wait a minute, this guy, he's actually used luminous paint within the bezel. And then as an actual surprise, which I didn't even notice at first until the second time that I was checking it, you'd actually done it on the sweeper as well. And I really liked that contrast of how it looks. So I had it on a sunny day and then I went inside. And the fact that you get that two-tone combination of lume across the bezel and the sweeper, and then of course you've got the buttons, and then you know, etc., etc. So you've got this white and orange kind of glow in the dark. And to me, that was another thing where I was really like, wow, that's a really, really nice extra attention to detail, something that you don't see very often on other watches as well. I mean, you get lume, of course, and that's normal and expected. So I really like the way from the outside perspective, it doesn't look like it's loomed at all. It really just looks like paint. But then to see that you'd actually applied this, yeah, for me, that was tip top. So my hat is definitely off to you guys for that. So one other thing that I wanted to know about as well, what was the reason behind choosing the Sellita movement that you chose? I mean, there's other options that you could have gone down. What was the reason particularly behind that choice?
I was thinking about what to do, and I wanted to have a reliable movement, which is mass-produced. I mean, the original movements were also mass-produced, but I don't happen to have a movement maker in-house like Enicar does. Of course, the two biggest options are first ETA, and the other one is Sellita. Yeah. And I also contacted at ETA or ETA, but they are not producing for anybody else anymore except in-house Swatch Group and maybe some others, but not very reliably. So I mean, they didn't want to supply me. So then I went to Sellita, and I found that they were still taking us on as a manufacturer, so which is nice. Yeah. And I also looked at other options, but I mean, yeah, there are some others. Sometimes I got the feedback they're not as reliable and not as proven, and to do something completely on my own or completely new, I thought, I as a newbie, I introduced so many new things into the watches, like the new compressor back redesign. I completely reinvented the compressor crowns. I have the new lume, whatever. I mean, I had many things, so I thought, maybe not introduce another completely new thing. Yeah.
But from my understanding in regards to the movements, they're different grades as well. I think is it from 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, like depending on the quality of it?
Yes, they have 3 precision.
All right, okay.
Versions. One is the basic. I don't know what they're called. Then there is the top, or even they have 4. I think okay. 4, basically, they have 4, and the highest is COSC. Yeah. And we have 1 below. Right. We have the same mechanics in it, but the COSC is better regulated. And it's, of course, then put through the tests at the COC certified institute. Yeah. I can't get them because I'm not Swiss.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And obviously this is the reason why I already knew the answer to, I mean, I guessed the answer, let's say, in regards to why you didn't have an ETA movement in there, with these guys really locking things down in regards to Swatch Group, and you're in our club or not, and that's basically just how it is. So I do get that. I don't agree with it, unfortunately, but that's how it obviously is working with those guys now. I don't actually know how they get away with it, but still.
Yeah, it's a very tough thing. I mean, some projects, I mean, my watch designer, he also has some other projects, and some companies like me came on later, didn't get supplied by Sellita. I mean, even Sellita now is more like ETA used to be, in a way. Okay, they used to be the custom spec house for ETA movements. Yeah. And they were customizing for everybody. And now they're very limited in what they want to do for you.
So did they customize the rotor for you, or was this something that so you basically buy them from them and then you have to do this elsewhere, let's say?
Yes. So basically they have a very limited thing they offer you. I mean, they have a very limited shape.
Yeah.
And within that, they can engrave your logo, but I didn't like the look. I wanted to have it closer to the original Enicar movements.
Yeah.
Well, we get the movements with the rotor.
Mm-hmm.
We take the rotor and do something completely else with it. So we take it apart, do a new brass part in the middle, modify quite a bit, and then reassemble and then put it back into the movement. So basically we get a gold-plated, highly finished. So the finishing is also different in different versions.
Mm-hmm.
Regulated movement. When it comes to us, we take it apart down to the escapement wheel and the seconds wheel, take out the wheels. The wheels are then laser engraved, micro laser engraved in Solingen, where all the good knives come from. And then we put them back in, reassemble the movement, put on the rotor, and which we custom make. And so that's it. So it's not a standard Sellita in a way. I know there has been quite a bit of discussion on that, but there are big companies who've been using Sellita for a long time.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, basically, the way it's pretty much working now, anybody who's not part of Swatch Group that is selling like an automatic watch, they pretty much have a Sellita in there nowadays. That's how it's working. And that is how it is. Okay, so we're gonna have to talk about the elephant in the room, let's say. So the price of Sherpa watches is just shy of 6,000 euros. And with you being a micro brand, I will be honest, when I first heard about this, I was thinking it would be more in like around the 2,000 range. Is this something that you priced from the beginning, or is this something that basically just happened throughout the development of it with costs or whatever? I mean, obviously, I don't know how it works. And that it basically led up to the price of the watches being valued at around the 6,000 euro mark, which, if I'm honest, I was quite surprised about, because it is quite expensive. And it is also something that I felt I had to bring up, because it is something that I see mentioned a lot online. And I just wondered what your take on that was.
When I started, I thought I would bring back these two models for around 3,000 euros each. And I would be able to do that from Germany and Switzerland completely. That was my naive idea. But then in the middle of the development, I realized that this is not at all possible. And watches similar to mine, which have that price point, have the glass, the dial, the hands, and the case made in Asia.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to do that for that price point, I would have had to do that in Asia. But I don't want to do that. So, but I was very, very hesitant to take the decision, because the consequences were that I had to price it completely different from what I expected myself. And of course, I got, reactions like that. But if I look at, and the other thing is, of course, I'm doing only 150 pieces each.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that there are a lot more models which are super interesting, and I want to do first the 150 each, and then I'll move to other models. And also, as a small company, to be honest, we have to pre-finance the complete series in many regards.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to do 450 or 300, both of them. It would be more crazy to do that for 1,000 or 2,000 pieces. I can't afford that. So the limited series has two edges or two aspects. So but if I look at other brands and where they're getting the components from and what price range, I could see that most 3,000 euro watches still have case and glass made in Asia.
Yeah.
And if I look at let's say, the margin they make as a big brand, I cannot do that. The markup they do, I cannot. But I had to tweak it a bit, like to fall into that price range.
Yeah.
But you get a watch with all made in Germany and Switzerland, not a mass production watch because it's, you know, made in small numbers, not an assembly line, but one watchmaker, a bit boutique-like. You will not see the watch in the next middle management meeting that you're attending. You will be facing submariners and sea masters or speed masters. So you have a very unique watch with a unique feature and unique history. And yes, so that's, I mean, that's how it is.
So basically, what you're saying is that the price obviously is reflected because of the materials that's gone into it, and we've in-house is not really the word to use, but like let's call it in-country, so to speak. So I mean, it's as close as in-house as we're getting.
Yeah.
I mean, the one question that, I mean, I'm not exactly sure how to say it, but what I was wondering was, like, I understand that this is something that's very personal to you and it's your company and you're delivering it, but to an average watch collector, let's say, or a person who's buying it, is this something that you think that they would be overly concerned about? You know, or what I'm trying to say is, if, for example, you did go down the Asia route and then you had it going for like 2,500, 3,000, do you think that it would be more looked at more because of that, if you know what I mean? Or do you, or do you think people would overlook it? Yeah, that's what I mean. Do you think people would
sell
overlook
more
it
watches? More? Of course. I mean, if I look at the company, I mean, there's another example like Nevada.
Yeah.
Nevada does go that route, or Doxa.
Yeah.
Some other brands.
And Aquastar, I think also they
yes, I would guess so
as well. Yeah.
I didn't look into it, but if you look at the price point, it must be like that.
I think it has to be. Yeah, I think it has to be.
So you can do that. I really thought about it, but I mean, one of the things I mean, it's of course a personal decision. So
yeah, of course.
For example, the glass maker Sebal, they're producing the complete sapphire in Switzerland, like the raw sapphire. Yeah. And then they do all the steps in Switzerland. And this, the owner of that company, really nice guy, he said, Mr. Klocke, what will we leave for our children if we order everything in Asia? We will leave them a list of suppliers they can call, but nothing else. And he wanted to leave something behind, which is here. And we also lose everything else. I mean, all the know-how we will lose, everything like that. So my suppliers are all mostly family-led small companies in Europe, and I quite like the idea. So this is something people value or don't value. I completely understand that. I mean, before doing this project, I was not into shopping watches for 5,000, 6,000 euros, to be honest. But now, knowing more about the supply chains, how things are working, I took that decision. And of course, some people don't like the idea. At the first, many people were concerned it was completely ludicrous. Yeah. And they, especially looking at them online, they said, oh, that should cost around 2,000 euro, nothing more. Yeah? But people coming to the booth and having them in the hand, both OPS and ultra dive, they realized, oh, they have a special quality, a very quality feeling to it. And maybe they said, okay, it's not my price point, but they would admit that it has a certain quality. Yeah.
This is something that I definitely agree with you. I mean, you've took the words out of my mouth. I mean, I have been itching to get hold of one of these, to see one of these, and I'd still love to see an ultra dive. But
we make that happen.
Thank you very much. Before I saw it, obviously, it's exactly what you said. You're seeing something online, you're seeing something as a picture, a video. There is nothing more better than having a tangible object in your hand, be able to feel it. And that was the other thing, again, which I discussed in the video, is I mean, I own an Ops, I mean, as you know anyway, and the feel of this watch, I mean, I had your Ops on my wrist for the whole week. I mean, I never took it off, apart from when I went to bed, of course, but it felt just like the original. It had that feel to it, and you can definitely feel the quality within it. So it is a very different experience than just looking at images, and that is very different. The last thing that I just wanted to touch on price before we move on. If you had to go back and you did it again, would you still go down this route on this price, or would you have said to yourself, actually, I would have took it the other way?
I think I would have gone the same way.
Good for you.
I quite, of course, it's more, of course, it makes things more difficult. You have to explain a lot more, etc., etc. But I like my suppliers. I like to have them in Germany. I just visited them recently in Switzerland, you know. So I quite like that relationship, and I wouldn't have that with Asia. I couldn't. And also the knowledge that everything stays in Europe. I mean, it's a big topic. Also, then during the pandemic, a lot of things didn't work in Asia anymore. I mean, this wasn't foreseen by me. And I also talk now to some Swiss companies, and I say many Swiss companies are coming back to the suppliers because of different issues like transport, increasing cost in Asia, CO2, which is a subject I wouldn't touch on, but there are many subjects where they are looking at European supply chain again. So, and I could just say I'm like, you know, I'm already here. So,
I have everything. Everything's here. So that's it.
So that's And but what's quite important is that my customers. They are usually watch collectors, and some of them have really big brand watches, big names, and they say it's in the same league. So people having a collection of Patek, Audemars Piguet, and other big ones, and they just say this one fits into that category. I'm not a pompous guy usually, but I feel a bit like, it feels good to hear that, to have.
That's a big statement. I'm not going to lie. That's a big statement, and it surprises me to hear
of course,
that. I'm not sure I can fully agree with it. I mean, using the word Patek in there, but I understand where you're coming from.
That would make it into that area, But I just mean the look and feel on the wrist, etc. Gives you a very good quality feeling. The attention to detail is even in watches which are more expensive, not to the same detail in many regards. For example, the hands. I mean, you will see that when I send you the ultra dive. You know, you have a lot of details that are quite special. So yes, it will be a discussion, and the watch is not for everyone. It's a bit like a passion project. I did it the way I wanted to have them, and I'm quite happy that other people also like them. So, but that's the way I can only do it. I mean, I just do it the way I want to do it, and see if other people like it. But it seems so.
The other thing I was going to say as well is, while we're talking on this buyer level, it wasn't something that I actually thought about right away, but then it came to me while I was using the ops, while I was shooting the video for it, etc., etc. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm probably highly suspecting, because before I say it, as Enicar collectors, you have this certain bias about you. And then I actually thought to myself, Enicar is such a niche brand. It will probably maintain to be such a niche brand as a collector. And as a person who deals with watches, works with watches, etc., and I go to many watch fairs and I speak to many other people who sell watches, etc. And one thing that's never failed to amuse me is the amount of people that I've actually met along my journey, let's say, that I've never even heard of Enicar. To which then made me actually think about Sherpa watches. And I'm actually betting that probably a good 80%, if not more, of the people that are interested in your watches, purchasing your watches, have probably never heard of Vintage Enicar either. Correct me if I'm wrong.
True. It could be like that, yeah.
Do you have any other particular Enicar models in mind that you are going to develop or look into? Are we going to see a possible Sherpa Guide GMT, or is it going to be a chronograph maybe? Anything in the pipeline you want to share, or is it super hush?
So I mean, us being a very small company, I have to, you know, look at the resources.
Of course.
I mean, if you look at the chronograph, I'm just, give me 2 million and I would like all the chronographs, which is so amazing. I mean, honestly. So yes, this will happen sooner or later, But of course, next step, I do have some steps. So if you look at ultra dive and OPS, there is a very simple next step. Because of the ultra dive, there had been a version with a different dive color.
Yep.
So we are looking into that.
Okay.
And then, of course, we have the 40mm case. The two very special ones, the twins, OPS and ultra dive, had the crown guards.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are other versions without the crown guards. So
that's also true.
the easiest step will be a model without the crown guards. So I could imagine, or I would think, the super dive is an easy one.
Yeah.
And we're also looking at the super jet, which is, of course, a brilliant model I would like to bring back. Super dive is easier. Super jet will be a bit more difficult, but I'm looking into that.
Because of the movement complication we're talking about, I'm assuming, with it being a GMT.
Yeah, the super jet, of course, it's a bit different movement. We have to do more adaptations. The super dive is very straightforward.
Yeah.
But super jet I will have to look into. Yeah, but I think it's feasible.
Excellent.
And also live, I really love that. And of course, then we have to do new cases. Yeah, I mean, there's some women asking for smaller size cases. And of course, all the models with the red ring is, of course, also brilliant. I mean, it's the only company who had that, right?
Yeah.
That's a unique, very unique design.
Yeah.
And it's also something I would like to bring back. So yeah, there are many options, but the next steps are quite simple and straightforward.
Okay.
So, at least for one or two models, I think we'll show at least something this year.
Wow, this year. So 2023.
2023, at least you will see some things to show. And of course, we have metal bracelets in the working.
So last question from me. Where do you see Sherpa Watches in the next 2 to 3 years, let's say? What's your long-term goal in regards to the brand?
Okay. My long-term goal is actually that I will work only for Sherpa Watches, because right now I'm doing a bit like a side project, a very big one, big passion project. But I would like to bring back most of the legendary Sherpa series.
Wow.
So one after another, I want to bring them back up to the chronographs. And then I would like to, further do adjustments to the ones already made now. So if I go the full loop, I want to, move on the brand to, a Mark II version of ultra dive and see on OPS and see where we can move. So of course, first I want to reissue a lot of the legendary models and then move on. I want to grow this. So
yeah.
But step by step.
I was just side question, but you obviously have a lot of vintage Enicar material out there in regards to ideas, etc. And like you just mentioned, watches that can homage within new Sherpa Watches range. Will there be anything completely different that would have nothing to do, like a completely new style design, etc., but using like the original EPSA cases, this kind of style, but something completely different that we've not seen before based on vintage Enicar, let's say?
I could imagine that, but it's not the time right now for me. So I think first, there's so much material.
Yeah, you have a lot of things to play with.
There's so much material, but then of course I also see the need that I cannot just be a bring back vintage all the time brand. So this will be a new phase, but I don't know when this will start.
Yeah,
I'm a guy who can be, bored quite quickly, so it could happen sooner than later.
We will have to see.
Yeah, we have to see. I mean, the whole thing has been like, I'll do this step and then I'll do that step. So I don't know. It might happen sooner than later, but this brand will grow.
We will have to see. Okay, Martin, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for being on Horology Biology. Super appreciated.
Yeah, thanks you so much for having me, and it was a really great conversation. And
You're
thanks
welcome.
for testing the OPS.
You're welcome. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.